What's the cheapest way to get the iPhone 6? Is the iPhone 6 really worth the cost? And is it wise to use a 0% balance transfer card to pay down your debt? We'll answer these questions and more on this, the 117th episode of the DoughRoller Podcast.
Welcome to the DoughRoller Podcast, where the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. We help you make more, spend less, and invest the rest. And now your host, Rob Berger.
Whether you're just starting out, buried under a mountain of debt, or well on your way to financial freedom, this is the podcast to help you take your finances to the next level. Hey, everybody, hope you're having a great day. Have a show that I can't tell you how many hours of research I've put into this show about the ridiculous iPhone 6. And I'm an Apple lover. I've got Apple computers, iPad, iPhones. I got the whole thing. And I thought, I'll put together a show on, the best place to buy the iPhone 6. I mean, how hard can that be to figure out, right? Just a couple of Google searches. I'll have this show put together in a half hour, good to go, and I'll record it. I tell you, I've chatted. You can chat online with Verizon repeatedly. They drive me crazy, and they're the service that we currently use. It's just so complicated to understand, the pricing. I've chatted with, Sprint. I got in my car. I was so frustrated with trying to figure Verizon out and finding what I thought were conflicting pieces of information online. At one point today, I just got in my car and drove over to the Verizon store, which is not far from our home. And I walked in. I said, okay, you need to answer some questions. And I grilled the guy for 10 minutes about, the plans and, can I buy the phone up front and get a better deal on the monthly plans? Do I have to sign a 2-year contract? And what's it look like if I do? They all want you now to lease the phone. That's sort of a new thing that the carriers have started. And is that a good deal or not? And it's unbelievably complicated is the long and short of it. I'm going to try to walk through it as best I can today, kind of share with you what I've learned, share a couple of tools and sources of information online that hopefully can help you figure your way through this if an iPhone 6 is in your future. But I got to tell you, it's just frustrating. You think, can someone please come out with a plan with a pricing method that is transparent? That would be the first thing, transparent and just sensible. I might even pay extra if I could just get something that makes sense and is logical. And some of them are a little better than others in terms of how easy it is to understand their plan. I found T-Mobile to probably be the easiest one to understand. I don't think it's the cheapest, but probably the easiest one to understand. And Sprint isn't too bad either, although there were some complications there that I'll walk through. And again, just I can't. I at one point I thought I can't do this show. I don't know the answer. I have no. I can't provide anything helpful to anybody about how to buy a stinking smartphone. Well, in any way, I finally said, I'm going to record the show. I'm going to give you the best information I can find. I'm going to give you some additional tools and resources to go check it out. And then I'm going to rely on you guys to send an email that says, Rob, you missed this. No, you can do this over here and whatever. There you go. You can see. I hope you can sense the frustration. But I'm going to try to work my way through this to provide you the information that I can. I'm also going to give a shout out to Republic Wireless for those of you that say, yeah, an iPhone is just too much money. Because there's no doubt in my mind that if you don't want an iPhone, Republic Wireless is one of the best deals out there. All right. Before we get to all that nonsense, by the way, it makes asset allocation and investing look like a walk in the park. I got to tell you that. I mean, if you can figure out how to buy a smartphone for the best deal possible, you should have no trouble managing your own investments because that's easy compared to this stuff. All right. Before we get to that, I have an email that I wanted to read very quickly from a listener named Mark. He wrote in, he said, I need some advice. I have two credit cards. One is 29.99%. and a balance of $2,500 out of a credit limit of $3,750. The other is 27.99%, $4,000 a balance out of a credit limit of $7,500 on it. I only paid the minimum due to financial constraints, so needless to say, the balance does not budge much. I was thinking of transferring to 0% credit card for 15 months to pay it down. Would this be a wise decision? Well, that's a good question. We've talked about balance transfer cards a little bit on the show, I think once or twice, and I've given you my thoughts on it. I can tell you that what Mark is suggesting is exactly what my wife and I did many years ago when we had credit card debt. And we would just put it all on the 0% card, and oftentimes we had to put it on 2 or 3 because of credit limits. And it would last for, I think, anywhere from 12 to 24 months, depending on the deal that we got. You can't find one today for 24 months, but back then you could. And we'd, pay the minimum payment, but of course it all went to the principal. There was no interest being charged. There is a balance transfer fee. It's typically 3%, but I think if that's generally much lower than what interest you're going to be charged on a card. That's certainly true with Mark. He's paying basically 28 and 30%. So the 3% transfer fee is nothing compared to the interest rates he's paying on his cards. And so that's what we did. We paid the transfer fee. Back then, you could actually find a card every now and again with no transfer fee. That's harder to do today. The Chase Slate is the only one that I'm aware of that has no transfer fee. A great deal, by the way, 0% for 15 months. And so that's what we did, and we continued to transfer. When the offer expired, we transferred it to a new card and continued to pay off the debt, and eventually paid it off and haven't had a credit card debt since then. So yeah, it is I think a great way to get out of debt. All your money goes to the principal. You get out of debt faster and for less money. There are a couple things to keep in mind. You usually need a pretty good credit score to qualify for a card that offers 0% for 15 months. That's the first thing. Excuse me. The second thing is you may not qualify for enough credit to cover all of your existing debt, so you could end up having to apply for more than one. The other thing you have to be careful about is what some people do is they transfer the debt and they're starting to pay on the new credit cards at 0%. And then they get tempted to use those old cards that now don't have a balance, and they end up in more debt than when they started. So you've really got to be honest with yourself and assess, how committed you are to getting out of debt. And one option, of course, would be to just cut up the old cards. You don't even have to close the accounts; just cut them up so you don't use them. That's one option if you think it's going to be, an issue for you. But if it is, the last thing you want to do is transfer the debt and then use the old cards and go into more debt. That if you think that's a fear, if that's a real possibility, frankly, I'd bite the bullet and pay higher interest on the existing cards, get them paid off, and then cut up the cards if you have trouble staying out of credit card debt. So that would be in that kind of extreme case, that's what I would do. I think the most important thing is keep staying out of credit card debt. I like the reward cards that we use. We have talked about them in the past, but if it's going to cause you to go into credit card debt, it's just not worth it. So that's my answer to Mark's question. Yes, I think it is a wise decision, as long as you handle it responsibly. If you want more details on 0% balance transfer cards, just go to episode 44. You'll find that at DoughRoller.net/podcast 44, and that's when I kind of walk through the deal, the 0% balance transfer deals and how they work and the pros and cons and all that sort of thing. So, Mark, appreciate your email. Hope that's helpful for you. Okay, now on to I should call this the episode of Doom. I think that's the name of it. iPhone 6. Where do you buy them? Are they worth it? Where can you get the best deal? So, why is this so complicated? Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first is that the number of lines that you have is gonna affect where you can get the best deal. So if you're just by yourself, you've got one phone line, or you may be a family of 4 or more, and you might have 4 or more lines on your plan, and that really does affect. Obviously, it affects the price. You would expect that, but it also affects where you can get the best deals. So that's the first factor you need to think about: number of lines. The second factor is, are you trading in an existing iPhone? With some of them, you can get some cash back for your iPhone. Now, you don't have to go through the carriers to do that. There are other ways to sell, used iPhone, But if you're going to go through the carriers, you have to understand how much you're going to get and what the details are. As I mentioned, I was chatting online with a rep from Verizon, and one thing that I learned is that if you have an old iPhone to turn in, it can be a good deal through Verizon, but you have to sign up in order to get that trade-in value for your iPhone. You have to sign up for the 2-year contract. That's the option you have to select. And so, again, we could sit here all day long and ask why. That's just the way Verizon does it. And but that's a nuance that you need to understand. So when you're looking at any carrier, and if you've got an iPhone to trade in, make sure you understand not only what you're going to get for it, but also if there are any hoops you have to jump through or particular plans that you have to sign up for to get that trade in. Third factor, do you have an existing contract that hasn't expired? Now you've probably seen in the news that some of the carriers will buy you out, will pay you to break your contract with your existing carrier, and so that in that case, it's not an issue. You won't end up out of pocket. But not all carriers do that. And so if you've got an existing contract that you have to break, obviously you want to factor that in. The fourth thing is how frequently you want to upgrade your phone. A lot of the carriers now are offering effectively a lease where Sprint calls it an iPhone for life, where you'll pay, say, $20 a month, for example, with Sprint. And you're just basically renting the iPhone, and after 2 years, you can continue to pay your $20 a month. And when the iPhone 7 comes out, you'll be able to get the iPhone 7. So that's actually, we'll look at it. It's not a bad deal if, this is a big if, you're someone who wants to upgrade frequently, say upgrade every 2 years. That is a very expensive way to buy a smartphone. It's kind of like the folks that want to buy a new car every 2 years. That's pretty expensive to do. But if that's the decision you want to make, actually leasing the phone can actually be a good. I hate to call it a good deal, a better deal if you're a frequent upgrader. The fifth factor to think about is the coverage areas. They're not the same, of course. I think probably Verizon and AT&T have the best, although as soon as I say that, I know I'm going to get email with folks saying, no, that's not true. And that's fine. Shoot me. I expect I'm going to get a lot of email on this podcast, so might as well start here. But from what I've seen, take Sprint, for example. It certainly doesn't have as good a coverage area as Verizon, although depending on where you live, it may be perfectly fine. I know that our daughter has an iPhone through Virgin Mobile, which is a subsidiary of Sprint, and at least where we live, she's had no issues with it. So, and she's had, she was in Missouri for school, had no issues there. She used it in Louisiana, had no issues there. So, out west, I think it gets really spotty for Sprint, but certainly you want to consider the coverage area. And, those are sort of the five factors, from our side of things, from the consumer side. But then, of course, you have all of the hoops you have to jump through with all the carriers and all their different deals and how you pay for the phone. And we're going to look at some of that. But all of those things add up to, unfortunately, what is a very complicated purchasing decision. Now, before I get into some of the details and some of the resources that I'll send you to on the iPhone, let me give a pitch to Republic Wireless. Republic Wireless is, of course, they sell Android phones. They don't sell the iPhone. They have the Moto E, G, and X. The Moto X is their top of the line. It costs $299. They don't subsidize it. You pay the full price, but it's $299. That's significantly cheaper than the lowest price iPhone. Let's see, the iPhone 6, 16 gigabyte, I think is $650 unsubsidized. Moto X, $300, $299. So a big difference there. And you can get the 4G plan, unlimited everything, for $40 a month. If you don't need that fast of data and you're fine with the 3G, you can get that for $25 a month. And for some of you that can just rely on Wi-Fi for data, $10 a month. So Republic Wireless really is, for a smartphone, I think the best deal going. And again, I'm a big lover of all things Apple, and the iPhone. But they are, no matter how you buy it, no matter which carrier you go to, no matter how you whether you pay up front for the iPhone, you finance it, whatever, 2-year contract, doesn't matter. It is a lot of money. And Republic Wireless, I think, is probably one of the least expensive ways to get a good smartphone. Now, you can check them out. You go to DoughRoller.net/Republic Wireless. That is an affiliate link, but that will redirect you to Republic Wireless, and you can check them out. So that's my pitch. Now, having said that, you're going to a fair question from you to me is, okay, Rob, so are you going to use Republic Wireless? Well, that was my plan. I don't think I'm going to, though. I'm probably going to stick with an iPhone. I know, the horrors. Why am I going to do that? Well, because I'm insane? No. Well, maybe. I'm going to stick with an iPhone because my employer will pay for the cost of the phone and basically the service. So, that's, I guess that's another factor I should have added. You may have an employer to put on your job and whether you have, communication needs, and they will help subsidize the cost of your phone. I know that can be true for a lot of people in IT and other things, maybe consultants, people that travel a lot for work. So in my case, I can basically get the lower end. I'm not going to get the 6 Plus, but I can get the 6 with 16 gig of data or memory, maybe 64 gigabytes of memory, and basically not pay anything for the phone. And it won't pay 100% of my monthly costs, but it'll come close. And so, I've had an iPhone for a while. So for that reason, I'm likely going to stick with an iPhone and upgrade to the iPhone 6 at some point. My wife and I are still discussing all of this. And I probably won't go with Republic Wireless. That is why. And I'm happy for you to email me and say, Rob, you're an idiot. And here's why you shouldn't get the iPhone 6, notwithstanding what your company's going to do. So feel free to send me that email. Hopefully you'll be a little kinder than that, but that's okay. Republic Wireless, still a great deal. Okay, now on to the iPhone. So what I tried to do, my plan was to have this beautiful table in the show notes with all the different options, and it just became overwhelming. I mean, first of all, it changes depending on the number of lines, as I mentioned earlier. Obviously, it's going to vary depending on exactly which iPhone you get, not just 6 versus 6 Plus, but also how much memory. They each come with 3 different memory, 16 gigabyte, 64, and 128, and the prices vary, of course, as the memory goes up. So that's a factor. So what I thought I'd do is kind of just walk through my calculations of what it would cost you to get an iPhone, a single line, from each of the 4 main carriers: Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. And if they offer different ways to buy the phone, how that plays out. I'm going to walk through that as best I can. And then give you some tools. One tool that's really pretty handy that allows you to set exactly what you want, how much data you want, how many lines you're going to have, and it recalculates some costs for you that I found pretty handy. So I'll mention that too at the end. So that's the plan. One thing I will say is that Virgin Mobile, which I mentioned is a subsidiary of Sprint, that's where my daughter has an iPhone through Virgin Mobile. It's like $30 a month. Yeah, we paid full price, and I think it's $30 a month, unlimited everything. I think it's $35, but then we get a discount for paying automatically. Charge it to a credit card. I think we get it for $30 a month, and it's a great deal. I mean, certainly over 2 years, even paying full price, she has a 5S, I believe. Excuse me. It's going to be a great deal, and she's had no problems with the coverage. Now, at the moment, the 6 and 6 Plus are not available on Virgin Mobile, but everything I've read says they eventually will be, and it's always a little bit later. The main carriers have it first, and then Virgin Mobile will eventually have the 6 and 6 Plus. So, I think if you're comfortable with the Sprint network, and you can wait a little bit, I would waiting for the Virgin Mobile to see how their pricing plays out. Don't know exactly what it'll be, but that actually could be a good way to go. The other thing I'll say before I jump into these plans is, when they come out with the next model, in this case the 6, it reduces the price for the 5. So if you don't need the latest and greatest, you're going to get a great deal on a 5S, or if you're willing to go kind of stick with the older technology. Actually, that's what I have at the moment. I don't have a 5S, I have a 5, so mine's even older. My wife has a 4, believe it or not. And but the 5 is a great phone, so that's another option if you want an iPhone but don't want to spend an arm and a leg. Okay, so with that, let's walk through the various options that I could find. Let's start with Sprint. So with Sprint, they have the basic plan. It's $50 a month. That's for the plan, not the phone, the plan, and that's unlimited data. Of course, unlimited talking and text. They have a special deal now too for multiple lines. would be $100 a month. So if you have a family of four, through 2015, you'd get all those lines for just $100 a month. After 2015, you add to that $15 per line, so it could go up to what, $160? Pretty big jump if I've got my math right. But at least for now, a pretty good deal on the plan. So again, but sticking with just one line, $50 a month. So what about the phone? Well, I think I mentioned Sprint's doing this iPhone for Life plan, and you basically lease the phone for $20 a month. And then after 2 years, presumably the iPhone 7 is out, and you could just stay with Sprint, continue to pay your $20 a month, assuming they don't raise the cost. And you'd just have the iPhone 7. You'd trade in the 6 for the 7. And so for those that like to frequently upgrade, it's probably one of the least expensive ways to do it. Total cost for 2 years, the $50 a month unlimited data, and then $20 for the phone comes out to $1,680. And I'll have all these numbers in the show notes along with the links to resources that I'll mention in a minute. So I'll run through these numbers kind of quickly. But 2-year cost comes out to $1,680. Money that I'd much prefer to have in an index fund, but that's a whole other story. Okay, the second way you can buy the phone through Sprint is what they call Easy Pay, and this you basically take the cost of the phone and spread it out over 24 months. They don't charge you interest, so if you were to add up these payments, they come out to the full price of the iPhone 6. This is a 16 gigabyte, and which is $650, $649.99. So to do that, you have 23 payments of $27.09, and the 24th payment is a little lower, $26.92. So the total 2-year cost there is a little higher, $1,849.99. The difference is after 2 years, you own your phone, and you can stick with that phone. You obviously don't have to buy a new one, and you could use that phone as long, I guess, until it broke, right? And you'd be at $50 a month for the unlimited data at Sprint, again, assuming they don't raise their prices between now and then. So what they call Easy Pay, it turns out to be roughly this is about $170 more over 2 years than the iPhone for Life plan, but you own the phone at the end of that time period. So in terms of the plans we'll look at, these two, and particularly, I guess, the iPhone for Life, if we're focused on just the 2-year cost, is one of the lower cost options for the iPhone. All right. Now, one thing I should add before we leave Sprint, they have a 2-year service agreement plan where you actually sign up for a 2-year service agreement. The crazy thing is you don't get the $50 deal, the $50 per month for unlimited data. You get a plan that costs more like about $100 a month. So for some reason, they're just not wanting you to go with a 2-year service agreement. I don't know why. But again, that's just one of the many weird things about how they price, meaning the industry, prices smartphone plans. So that's just something to look at. When I saw that online, that's one of the reasons I chatted with Sprint. I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. Normally, when you sign a 2-year agreement, you get a better deal. Do I get it right here that if I sign a 2-year agreement, I get a worse deal? Yep, that's what they told me, and that's what their site says. So there you go. All right, Verizon. So Verizon was a big surprise for me. I just expected them to be the most expensive. And for a single line, they are the cheapest. I wonder if that's going to get some email. I know you guys are going to fire me up with email. You're going to say it's not true. I think it is. So here's the deal. Normally with Verizon, the way it works is they have the cost of the line itself, the texting and the phone, $40. Then you have to buy a data plan. And so for all of these, Sprint's unlimited, but I was basically trying to, for those that aren't unlimited, I was looking at their 2 gigabyte a month plan. For Verizon, it's $50. So you have your $40 for the plan, $50 for the data, $90 a month, and then the phone on a 2-year contract costs you $199. So that's not a great deal. It turns out, though, that at the moment you can get the monthly costs not at $90, but down to $60 a month. Now, I went online. I read this online on a blog, and I thought, well, let me check this out. So I go to Verizon Wireless, and it's $90. I said, there's no $60 deal. It's $40 for the line, $50 for the 2 gigabytes of data. It's $90. That's what prompted me to get in my car today and drive over to the Verizon store. I said, do you have a $60 deal? He goes, yep. So I don't understand. I went online. Yeah, it's not online. What are you trying to hide it from everybody? You got to go into the store to get it. Now, I don't know if they'll eventually put it online. It wasn't today. But The Verizon rep in the Verizon store confirmed to me face-to-face that you can get for a single line, you can get it for $60 a month. That's 2 gigabytes of data. The phone costs you $199. It's a 2-year total cost of $1,639. That is the cheapest way I can find to get the iPhone 6. Again, it's the 16 gigabyte, 2-year cost, $1,639. It's the least expensive way right now that I can find that you can get the iPhone. If you know of a less expensive way, again, that's to get the iPhone, let me know. Verizon, believe it or not, is the least expensive. Now, I will say, if you have more than one line, this whole sort of deal falls apart. You end up going into their normal pricing mechanism where it's $40 a line and then you share data over your multiple lines. If you have Verizon, some of the others work this way too, some don't, but you basically buy data that you share with however many lines you have on your contract. We have 3, my wife, myself, and my son. As I mentioned, our daughter's on Virgin Mobile. So we get 3 gigabytes of data. Let's see, our son uses like 2.9 gigabytes of data, and my wife and I try to share on 100 megabytes. That's basically how it works out. If you're a parent, I think you understand. So once you get beyond one line, this whole $60 a month deal doesn't work. They don't price it that way. But for a single line, it's the least expensive that I could find. AT&T wins the prize for the most expensive that I could find. Their basic deal is you can get the phone. Cost of it, they stretch it out over 24 months, comes to $27.09. And for 2 gigabytes, the cost that I found was $65 a month. Total price $2,210.16. That's a 2-year cost. Was the most expensive that I could find. So if you're looking to pay the most you possibly can for the iPhone 6, AT&T is where you want to go. Now, for you, if there are folks out there that love AT&T and I've got the math wrong, let me know. But I've double-checked it, and I've checked other sources. They all say the same thing. But if there's a better deal out there to be had at AT&T, I'd love to hear about it, and I will absolutely pass it on to everybody else in a future podcast. So that's what I found with AT&T. T-Mobile. As I mentioned earlier, T-Mobile, I think, probably has their website is for me the easiest to understand. It's the easiest to understand and the easiest to work through, I found. And their deal is pretty simple. You once again pay for the cost of the phone. They had it, it's interesting. AT&T was $27.09. T-Mobile is $27.08. But it still comes out to roughly $650 over 24 months. Their plan, 2 gigabytes, is $45 a month. That's for a single line. It's interesting. If you have multiple lines, they don't offer 2 gigabyte plans that I could find. They have 1, 3, and it goes up, not 2. But for a single line, you can get 2 gigabytes, $45 a month. This comes close to Verizon, but when you do the math, it comes out to be a little bit more, actually about $100 more, $90 more over the course of 2 years. Price comes out to $1,729.92. So again, this is just a single line. You may have multiple lines, and you're going to have to do the math. I'll give you a resource in a minute that I found helpful to do that. But that's what I found for the single line. Verizon wins in that one. So a total shock to me. If you've got different information, I would love to hear it. Now, what is the tool that I'm talking about? Well, a couple of things. The first is a site called Wallet Hub did a graphic that mapped out the cost. They actually discounted the costs to present value, although they used a 5% annual discount rate. If you know anything about present value, the discount rate has a huge impact on what the present value of anything is. It's only over 2 years, so it's not a huge deal, but 5% I think was too high of a discount rate. But that's a whole nother story. I'm arguing with their math is basically what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, they actually came out with basically the same thing that I did, but the numbers that they show are discounted back to present value. But they show Verizon as the least expensive. And they actually had T-Mobile come in second, but I'm not sure about their math on Sprint. I don't think they got their math quite right on Sprint, but they weren't showing the option for an iPhone for Life plan. And over 2 years, that's actually the cheapest way at Sprint over their Easy Pay, which is more. So, but I will incorporate that graphic into the show notes so you can check it out. Now, the tool that I want to mention that I found kind of interesting and helpful is at a site called WhistleOut, WhistleOut.com. And again, I'll leave a link in the show notes because the URL for this is rather long. It's not their homepage. But they have a pretty cool tool that allows you to put in in this case, which iPhone you're interested in. I've got the iPhone 6, 16 gigabyte loaded in there. I want unlimited minutes. I want unlimited messages. You can select the data you want. I have it at 2 gigabytes. And then it'll show you the costs, the monthly price. The data isn't 100% perfect. For example, for Verizon, they show the $60 a month deal requiring you to pay the full upfront price of the phone. And at least according to the rep that I talked to, that's not true. You can pay the $199 on the 2-year contract. So something wasn't completely right there. But otherwise, I think the data in this tool is quite good. They show all the major carriers, and then you can add lines. So I've only got 1 line, but if you're going to have 2, 3, 4, whatever, you can add as many lines as you want. You can pick which phone you want for each line, because maybe you've got, if you're like we are, not everyone's going to have an iPhone 6 in our family at the same time. So, you may have one that's an iPhone 5, one that's an iPhone 6, whatever. You can plug that in, and then you can look at different deals based on whether it's a contract, it's a monthly deal. They even have one prepaid offer here from U.S. Cellular. So this was a very helpful tool. Again, you'll want to confirm all of this information. I think this is a starting point. You want to confirm it with whichever carrier you end up choosing to make sure all the numbers are correct. But this was one of the best tools I could find to compare iPhone 6 pricing. And frankly, I'm not sure how they put all this together because, as I told you, it's just crazy complicated based on countless factors, and including based on some deals that don't appear to be advertised on the carrier's website, and like the Verizon situation. So again, I think this was a very helpful tool. Whistle Out is the name of the site, and I will leave a link in the show notes to this tool, along with I'll include an image of it so you can see what it looks like in the show notes. Again, as always, you'll find the show notes on DoughRoller. Specifically, if you go to doughroller.net/podcast117, it'll redirect you to the show notes for this episode. You can check it out. Okay, there you go. That's my best effort at giving you some information on the iPhone 6. If you want to spend the money, no matter what you do, it ain't cheap. So there you go. I know I'm going to get email from you. I hope I get email from you. Tell me about other deals I've missed, other ways to look at this, other tools you found to find a good deal. Love to hear about it. I will absolutely forward it on to everybody. Just shoot me an email at dr@doughroller.net. Okay, on to the tip of the day. And this was a tool, it's funny, I keep a spreadsheet of all the podcasts that I've done. And in the spreadsheet, I include the topic, if there was a guest on the show, who the guest was, and this tool of the day, or tip of the day, as I call it. And I was looking at this one for today, and I was thinking, I don't think I've mentioned this in the past, but sometimes I'm pretty good at keeping the spreadsheet up to date. But I thought, maybe I've mentioned this in the past, and I just can't remember. So I'm not sure if I've mentioned this in the past, but it's a cool tool that I wanted to mention again. If I've mentioned it in the past, again today. And actually, as I think about it, I am confident I've not mentioned this. And as I check out my spreadsheet, I don't think I have either. And it's a new feature to Personal Capital. I've talked about Personal Capital in the past. It's a tool that I use virtually every day. I do track my net worth on it. We've talked about that in a recent podcast. Let's see here. That I know I've got here. Podcast number 114. We talked about how to track your net worth. And I talked about different tools that I use. Personal Capital is one of them. For our home, what I normally do is check out the value of the home according to Zillow, and then manually enter it into Personal Capital. Well, that's kind of a pain because I have to update it, monthly or whenever. I have to go to Zillow, look it up, come over to Personal Capital, go to the manual asset that I've added called Home, and edit it. It's not the end of the world, but it's something I'd rather not do. Well, now you don't have to do that. Now Personal Capital can actually link to Zillow and pull in the value of your home. I know, it's pretty cool, isn't it? And the way you do it, it's really easy to do. In fact, I'm going to do it even as I record this podcast. I'm in Personal Capital now. I'm looking at my portfolio. Yes, it's cratered like everyone else's since the market's been down. Well, cratered is a little strong, but anyway, under my accounts, there's a little plus symbol to add an account. So if I click on that, you see all the basic institutions and whatnot. You can search for a bank or whatever. But towards the bottom, they have a new link that says Add Home Value. And this is my primary residence, so I can type in my address, which I'm doing now, including obviously the city, the state, the zip code, and it's going to use the Zestimate. There's a little tab, Use Zestimate for Home Value. I click Done, and it's linking, and it will automatically bring in the value of my home. And in fact, it's done. It just did it, and it makes it look like I've got more than I do because now I've got my home listed twice, right? I have that Zestimate that was just linked in, and then I have my home that I've manually entered. So now I've got to go in. I'm going to delete the home that I manually entered in, which as I look at it, by the way, it looks like the value of my home has gone down by like $50,000 since I last updated it. Ugh. Anyway, remove that. Boom, got that done. So now I've got it linked. So now I don't have to worry about updating my home value in Personal Capital. What I really like about it too is that I own 4 rental properties. So now I can put all of those in. I'll do the same thing and add those as investments. I'd kind of excluded those from Personal Capital for a couple of reasons, but now I don't have to. It'll be easy to connect them. You can connect as many homes as you want. So if you have rental properties, that's another way to track it. Obviously, you can connect your mortgages on those properties, but now you can use Zestimate and connect that. The Zestimate, that's the term that Zillow uses for their home values, if you're not familiar with it. The home value numbers aren't perfect, but I'm looking at it now, and we would get more for our home than what they've listed there. But when you factor out the fees we'll have to pay, it's probably a reasonable estimate, and now it's linked into Personal Capital. Well, there you go. I thought this was a pretty cool tool. You can check out Personal Capital at DoughRoller.net/PC. That is an affiliate link. It's a tool that I use and love. And there you go. Well, listen, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. And I hope it's been helpful to you for those that are thinking about an iPhone 6. Maybe I've convinced you just to go to Republic Wireless or some other low-cost provider. But if you want to get an iPhone, that's the best information I could find, along with the tools, including whistleout.com. Again, I'll leave links to all of that in the show notes, DoughRoller.net/podcast117. You can see the links there. Check that out for yourself. And as always, if you've got better information, better tips on this, please let me know, dr@DoughRoller.net. And would love to just hear from you otherwise, too, if you have questions or topics or whatever. I've got a number of great shows coming up. I've got a number of interviews scheduled that I think you're going to enjoy. Some that I've already interviewed folks, and I'm just getting the shows put together. For others, I've got the interviews scheduled, and I think you're going to really enjoy them. And looking forward to those. And last thing before I let you go, if you're ever thinking, how can I help you, Rob? You're putting this show together. Can I help you in any way? Actually, you can. Thanks so much for asking. You could do a couple of things. You could go to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast. For whatever reason, when the folks at iTunes are ranking podcasts, one of the big factors they look at is number of subscribers. So maybe you listen to the show from the website, from DoughRoller.net, that's great. But if you subscribe, that would help me out. If you leave a review, positive, negative, whatever, just whatever you think about the show, I like to get those reviews. They help me to make this a better show. That would be a big help as well. Well, there you go. Hey, listen, I hope you have a great day. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy, it ain't an iPhone 6. No, it's financial freedom.